As always, welcome everyone. We have been talking about kusala. This is a Pali word. It usually gets translated as wholesome or skillful. Kusala. And the whole of our spiritual life is about this. It's about understanding what is wholesome and what is not wholesome, and more and more and more inclining the mind towards wholesome. And as we undertake that practice, what happens is that the probability of us responding in a wholesome way, of us experiencing a wholesome mind state, just goes up and up and up. We're just increasing over through changing understanding and changing habits, changing sometimes who we hang out with. Then the probability that a wholesome mind state will arise goes up and up and up. It increases. It's so important, kusala, this Pali word. I did a little search on Sutta Central, and it's 726 times in the suttas. Very, very important. Kusala, wholesome, skillful, beneficial. So I've been drawing from teaching in the Abhidhamma that outlines 14 mental factors that comprise this wholesome mind state. And they are faith, mindfulness, non-greed, non-hate, metta, and those we've all talked about. And then they also include these two Pali words that Hiri and Ottappa. And these two sort of, they sometimes get called twin emotions, comprise our conscience. Hiri and Ottappa, and then lightness, softness, flexibility, and then an even mind and a tranquil mind, an uprightness, and a proficiency. These are those 14 mental factors that all come together when the mind is wholesome. So tonight, I'll talk about Hiri, Ottappa, and then this lightness, softness, flexibility. Hiri and Ottappa, almost always, I will read one time that I've found so far in the suttas where they don't appear together. But for the most part, they're always appearing together. And they're very, very important. The Buddha called them the guardians of the world. In fact, I'll read that sutta. And in this sutta, I'm reading Bhante Sujato's translation. Bhante Sujato translates Hiri as conscience and Ottappa as prudence. Thanissaro Bhikkhu translates Hiri as conscience, same as Bhante Sujato, and Ottappa as concern. And sometimes he says moral concern. And both are very beautiful translations. So this is from the numerical discourses in the Book of Twos, because it's Hiri and Ottappa. And it's Sutta number 9. And the Buddha says, these two bright things, mendicants, protect the world. Protect the world. What two? Hiri and Ottappa. Conscience and prudence. If these two bright things did not protect the world, there would be no recognition of the status of mother, aunts or wives, and partners of tutors, and respected people. The world would become desolate, like like goats and sheep, chickens and pigs, and dogs and jackals. Because the two bright things protect the world, there is recognition of the status of mother, aunts, wives, and partners of tutors and respected people. I think the reason that the Buddha is using this example of the status of mothers and aunts and wives and partners of tutors is quite culturally situated. It's because women at that time had absolutely no status and no protection. So if they weren't connected to a man, either their father, their husband, or their son, they were fair game. It was like finding $100 bill on the ground. You just do whatever you want with it. You found it. But because there is Hiri and Ottappa, because there is this conscience that we have, we do better. We do better than the law at that time. But if these two mental factors weren't available, weren't part of the human experience, weren't part of a wholesome mind, then we would be acting like animals, is basically what he's saying. This conscience and prudence, from the dictionary, these twin emotions, the Pali dictionary, the guardians of the world, are associated with all skillful actions. This, again, this idea that any wholesome mind state, it will always have this aspect of, arisen with it. It'll have our conscience. It'll have Hiri and Ottappa. Hiri is an inner conscience that restrains us from doing deeds that would jeopardize our own self-respect. This is so important to understand. Ottappa is a healthy concern of committing unskillful deeds that might bring about harm to ourselves or others. Ottappa sort of expands to this idea of concern for our own welfare and then the welfare of others. Hiri and Ottappa. And it comes from a self-respect, a self-regard. You know, you almost could translate kusala, and that sometimes it is translated in the dictionary as welfare, well-being. And the Buddha definitely came to understand this deeply even before he was fully awakened. In fact, this was a very important part of his own practice and development and his own awakening. And in the middle length discourses, a sutta that gets quoted a lot, it's sutta number 19, two kinds of thought. It's where the Buddha, before he's the Buddha, when he's still just the Bodhisattva and still developing his own meditation, this was a really important time that he started to completely think in terms of kusala, akusala, wholesome, unwholesome. And he realized when the mind drifted off into the unwholesome, that he started to see this chain, this domino effect, the outcome of that. And this is so important for our own development, for our own faith, that we start to connect dots that need to be connected. Often we've connected dots that actually aren't connected. We're not really understanding cause and effect. Lots of times we think the cause of something is from outside. It's actually always from inside of us. There might be a catalyst or a trigger outside, but the real cause is from probably our past and from inside of ourselves. And so the Buddha started to realize when the mind went into unwholesome territory, things that are the opposite of non-greed, non-ill will, the opposite of Hiri and Ottappa, the opposite of lightness, softness, flexibility. When the mind is heavy and stiff and hard and rigid, the Buddha realized this leads to my own affliction, to others' affliction, and to the affliction of both. And this is the Hiri and the Ottappa. It obstructs wisdom, causes difficulty, and leads away from Nibbana. And when the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, he says, when I considered this leads to my own affliction, this was something that helped him move away from an unwholesome mind state. That mind state subsided in him. Likewise, when he realized it leads to the affliction of others, when it leads to the affliction of both. Hiri Ottappa, guardians of the world. And so it's our conscience. And we all have a conscience. And it's paramount that we tune into it and that we listen to it and that we're sensitive to it. It's like a warning. So it's like a biological warning system, a moral compass inside of each one of us. And you realize that it's innate. You can see it in your children as you're raising your children, that they have a soft heart and they have a conscience, and their conscience gets pricked at times. And when we don't listen to our conscience, we pay a price. We always pay a price. When we go the wrong way, we always pay a price. You can think of it like the oil light going off in your car. If you don't pay attention to that, like it's not bad. When the oil light goes off, there's no problem. There's just a problem like about to happen, and you need to do something. And then if you don't, you pay a huge price. It's the same with our own system. And it's really important to understand when our conscience gets pricked, this is very wholesome if we respond, if we steer away from if we listen to our conscience. Hiri Ottappa, wholesome. If we don't pay attention to our own conscience, then we move away from wholesome. And then we ignore our conscience. We're making ourselves less sensitive, and there's like a bit of a hardness gets there. And then when we sit down to meditate, even maybe not sitting down to meditate, we will experience restlessness and remorse. And now this has moved into the unwholesome. Restlessness and remorse, regret, these are hindrance. This is a hindrance, according to the Buddha's teaching. So we want to respond when we're at the just the oil light. There's no alarm bells going off. There's no alarms. There's no police responding. There's just a little light. That's when we want to be paying attention and to be responding. And it's very forward leading. Anytime in the suttas, there's often times where people are paying attention to their conscience and they've done something that's not great. And their conscience is set off the oil light, and they they bring it out into the open. And the response is always this is, do you see the error? Do you see what led up to it? And do you feel confident that you can do it differently going forward? And if not, you'll just continue to be learning. This is growth. There's no place of guilt. Guilt is got this heaviness to it. And not it's not wholesome. It's truly not wholesome. And we get mixed up about this. I have been in my own life. We can think that guilt shows how much I really care. Guilt is because guilt it's very complex. It's got a lot of identity in it. It's got a lot of wanting and aversion, and it's got a heaviness to it. It's uh, as soon as so we want to move away from guilt. It's not productive. If we've seen that a certain habit, a certain behavior, a certain way of speaking, a certain way of responding, if we've gotten feedback that that's not working, that that's hurtful, and if we just want to respond. We don't need to feel guilty. And if we do feel guilty, we need to realize that this is not necessary, not needed. I've done the learning. I've done the learning. I've done my part. And when the guilt comes up, we can just say that to the guilt. Oh, habit, thanks, but I figured it out. We're proceeding ahead. And it's wonderful. And when we start to unburden ourselves from things, sometimes things come up that we did when we were in third grade. We see, oh, we make amends. Maybe we can't fix it with that person, but I see that. Now we can put it down and move ahead, lighter. And sadly, if we spend too much time in guilt, it gets even heavier, and it becomes shame. Again, these are not necessary. That they're not helpful. Many of us have carried lots of shame in our lives. It's been such a issue in my own life. And the longer I'm interacting with the Buddha's teachings, the more I'm understanding that I learned it very, very young. It was like my mother's go-to parenting strategy. It worked. It worked wonders. I was like the goodest girl possible, and really took that on, being the good girl, being nice, blah, 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 all of that. Many women around my age and my generation, many. If we weren't the bad girl, we were the good girl, and then lots of shame. And this is not, it's not needed. So it still comes up lots for me, but I understand, oh, this is like a way outdated operating system that, is clunky and takes such a long, it doesn't work, and it's so clear to me. So I can just be like, woof, that's a really old habit, and no need.
Turn that page.
Yeah, turn the page. And then the wind comes and the page blows back. So you just turn it again. This is the way that change happens. It's quite slow, lots of times for us, if it's quite ingrained, but totally changeable, very, very changeable. And really important to understand that Hiri Ottappa, my conscience, and when my conscience is pricked, still very, very wholesome. Very, very wholesome, very, very productive, useful, helpful, forward leading. When it gets into, regret and heavy or guilt, now this is not useful, not productive. It's weighing me down. So Hiri Ottappa, we want to listen to our conscience. And it segues beautifully into these other three qualities of lightness, softness, flexibility. And these are very, very wholesome and mental factors that they come along when we're being mindful, when we've got faith, when we are realizing that there's a lot of contentment, there's non-greed, there's non-ill will, we're not fighting reality. This lightness, softness, flexibility is there as well. They all come together. And interestingly, lightness, softness, flexibility, the Pali word for flexibility, it's like wieldiness, malleable. It's actually, you could even translate it as suitable to use. That this is when the mind is suitable to use. This is when it's workable. When it's got this wholesomeness to it. And when the course of meditation, the path of meditation, the trajectory of our meditation practice is always from things that are more coarse to things that are more and more and more subtle. And this lightness, softness, flexibility is included. And when the mind is being able to pay attention to a meditation object that is more and more and more subtle, the culmination of this is that you will enter deep states of meditation, and you'll experience the first jhana, then the second jhana, the third jhana, the fourth jhana. And in the fourth jhana, these aspects of the mind are they really reach their pinnacle, and the mind becomes very light and very, very soft and malleable. And this is when deep insight is very possible, because the mind is so workable, like gold. Many, many descriptions of this that the Buddha gives. And actually, this idea of coarse to subtle, even this lightness, softness, flexibility, you can even experience this in the physical body as the mind is in meditation. Many times you'll have an experience of the body becoming light and soft and flexible. The opposite is what happens with the unwholesome, this heaviness and this rigidity and this hardness. It's clear, even in a facial expression, in a heart, in a body, in a mind. We chanted the Metta Sutta, and it talks about being, letting go of fixed views. This is when the mind is becoming open and flexible. Even the word for this softness, mudu, is in the Metta. The Pali word is in the Metta Sutta. When our being is gentle and tender and soft, very, very wholesome, and the outcome of a wholesome mind state. You will also experience that in the body. You can and will even experience that with the breath. This idea of coarse to more subtle. The breath starts to become light and soft and flexible, malleable. Very obviously, part of a wholesome mind states. The opposite is um, the portrait, the picture of Dorian Gray. You know this story, the picture of Dorian Gray, Oscar Wilde. This is a quite a well-known story where he's not paying attention to his conscience, the opposite. He's hardening his conscience, Dorian Gray. And there's this picture of him, a very beautiful picture that's been painted. This is a story, short story by Oscar Wilde. And he goes out in the night and does something. I read it, I don't know, 40 years ago. It does something, I think he even steals or something horrible. And it's his first transgression. And he comes back and then he sees the picture of him, this painting of him, and it's beginning to be the lip is turned down, and it just night after night he goes and does something worse and worse and worse, and this picture of him becomes gruesome. But we're doing the opposite. But sometimes we have to start with the picture of whoever we are. We need to clean it up. We clean it up, and then it becomes more and more and more beautiful. I thought most people would know the picture of Dorian Gray. Do you know the picture of Dorian
Well,
Gray?
I read it, but I've totally forgotten it.
Yeah. It's a very graphic illustration of the conscience and everything becoming harder and heavier and gross. Becomes very gross, gruesome. Well, I'm going to end on a positive note. And that is, many of us here actually were at this Jam for Jasper on Saturday night. And I feel like everything that I'm talking about, you know, we chanted the Metta Sutta, everything I'm talking about, all of these wholesome mind states, and even Hiri and Ottappa, like this self-regard, this care about our own welfare, our own well-being, and the welfare and well-being of all beings, of human and non-human, boils down to love. And anyway, we go to this amazing fundraiser, beautiful event that really Scott Deal, you know, was completely behind, the mastermind behind. And again, he had arranged for Sarah, and it's really hard for me to say her last name, Emelogy. Sarah Emelogy closed the evening, spoke. And here we've got our MLA for our riding, quoting her meditation teacher at the end of this talk. It was so inspiring. And so her meditation teacher is Ann Douglas in Banff. And Sarah gave a very beautiful speech, just like off the top, you know, like from the bottom of her heart, off the top of her head. And ended with quoting Ann Douglas saying, "Love is the answer." And she goes, "Doesn't matter what the question is, love is the answer." And I feel like that is what we're talking about. When we talk about kusala, we're just talking about love. And it's what we all are capable of. It's what we all yearn for. And it is the essence of the wholesome mind. So I'll end there.